It's your boy, and we're back with another Master Duel video. Today, I thought I'd do something a little bit different. Today we're going to be talking about how to get into the game, tips to get better, tips on getting through the game and in progressing your account, overall general things on getting better at the game. Trying to cover as much as I can possible for any beginner that's looking to get into the game or to improve at the game. I'm going to be pretty much trying to freestyle this. There isn't going to be a script on this at all. I've just got some bullet points to try and cover here. So bear with me if it doesn't sound the greatest. But I feel like I do have a bit to offer to a new player to help them get into the game and a decent amount of tips. So let's go ahead and get into the first one. The first one is you need to get a campaign code and get the free rookie deck that they offer. And this is going to be my code right here. You can find it right here if you don't have someone or another YouTuber or something like that that's advertised their code. However you get it, it doesn't really matter. You just need to get your hands on one of these codes, put it in, and you'll get this whole deck. And let's go ahead and show off this deck right here. So this is the Blaze of Albaz deck that they're featuring for new players in the game. You get this deck straight out. All the cards in the list that you see right here, you'll be gifted for free. It's, in my opinion, I think this deck is fantastic for new players because it has a low skill to required to get into how to play the deck, but the deck also is, you can do a lot with this deck. This is one of the most skillful decks in the game, and don't let that deter you from trying it at all. It is very easy to do some of the basic stuff. Everything pretty much revolves around Branded Fusion, and Branded Fusion is just that card for the deck. It sends whatever materials you need for the fusion monster directly from the deck. You just play it, it summons the guy. You're looking to summon Mirror Jade. Mirror Jade is insane. Now, after you pick up this deck and you're able to pick up a couple of wins with it, you'll be getting some gems, climbing through the ranks, and your first big decision when getting into the game for the first time is going to be, do you want to continue pushing this list forward and adding more cards, or just use this list as a way to help facilitate you getting the gems, opening the packs, and getting the cards that you do want to play? It all really does depend on how you want to approach the game. Now, what I would recommend is that you keep in mind how many URs you're looking to end up crafting for your deck, whether it be this deck or some other deck. It doesn't really matter. And when I say URs, I mean ultra rares. They are the hardest resource in the game to accrue. It is essentially what's going to demand you to keep in mind as you progress through your account. Most of the good cards in the game are ultra rares. There are plenty of cards that aren't ultra rares that are really good, but you'll find that you'll be needing ultra rare dust all the time. So from this moment forward, we're going to go ahead and refer to ultra rares as URs. Now, if you're going to decide to move outside of this deck and craft another deck while you use this deck to help get those gems together, and don't forget to go through the solo mode as well and pick up the free gems in that. It takes some time, but it's totally worth it. You do need to keep in mind for how easy you're going to be making it on yourself to accrue resources. One of my biggest pieces of advice is you need to understand that there are a lot of really powerful decks out there, and when you choose to play something that is obviously lower in power level, you have to keep in mind that you are choosing to fight against the tide, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, and it can be very enjoyable, but you are essentially handicapping yourself a little bit. You are making the grind a little bit more difficult, or maybe take a little bit longer. And that could be frustrating for some players. Maybe you just want to get the cards that you really want to play, and you want a lot of cards. Well, if you want a lot of cards, if you want to build a lot of decks, I would really recommend having a deck like Branded, and that's what this deck is right here for the Blaze of Albaz structure deck that you'll be given through the campaign code, that you will have to probably keep some sort of good deck around and relevant to be able to grind out those gems that you need to open up packs and get the cards that you want for the lower power level decks. And it's not to say that those lower power level decks aren't going to be able to get you gems, but not everybody has the free time to be constantly dedicating time to the game, and to be constantly grinding and trying to get to master or whatever, just playing, I don't know, like pure Dark Magician or something. I don't really know. And honestly, Dark Magician's pretty decent, truthfully. I mean, it's not like the best, but like it's an alright deck. It's pretty good. My recommendations for starting out is I would hold on to this list. I would use this list a lot, and maybe even update the list with a few extra cards. You don't have to make it the strongest branded deck out there that you can find, but this deck is very good. It will take you very far, and one of the things that you really need to focus on with a brand new account is getting non-engine together. And what does that mean when I say non-engine? Well, cards like Albion, Aluber, Mirror Jade, all of this is your engine. These are the cards that make your deck go. They make your deck do the things. It's what gets you the wins. But a lot of times, it's just not enough. Some decks are just making crazy, uninteractive boards. You just can't play into them, or you just can't do enough. And that's where non-engine comes in. Cards like Forbidden Lance, Dark Hole, Cosmic Cyclone. These non-deck specific cards that will help you break apart your opponent's board, or also help disrupt your opponent in ways to help you be able to play the game. And non-engine is one of the most crucial aspects when it gets to deck building, and we'll explore deck building a little bit more later. But right now I want to focus on the three main cards that you craft these cards instantly. The second you get enough UR dust, you need to be crafting these cards. So let's pick up my branded list. You are crafting Maxi. You are crafting Ash Blossom, wherever it is. Okay, it's not in this list. I guess I don't play it in this list. Let's find a more normal list. Let's pick up the Dark Magician list. You are crafting 2 copies of Maxi, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and 2 copies of Called by the Grave. You are going to be essentially playing these cards in almost every single deck that you build. These cards are so good. They are ridiculous. Why? Because Maxi's busted. Say what you want. I have my opinions on Maxi. We won't get into it here. But Maxi is in the game. Maxi is... It could be argued, but in my opinion, the strongest hand trap in the game. And we'll get into essentially what a hand trap is here in a minute. But a lot of the game, a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! In Master Duel is shaped around this card's existence. And what I mean by that is you were playing Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring at 3 copies because of Maxi. Why? Because Ash Blossom stops Maxi. Called by the Grave stops Maxi. Maxi is just that good. You need ways to stop this card. This card will just end games on its own. Now, what does Maxi do? It's very simple. Ideally, during your opponent's turn, you send it from your hand to the graveyard, and then for the rest of that turn, every time your opponent special summons, by any way, graveyard, from the deck, from the hand, from the banishment, from the extra deck, any special summon will immediately draw you 1 card. And in a trading card game, most trading card games, if you have more cards than your opponent, you are typically winning that game. Typically. You were just able to out-advantage your opponent with just sheer resources a lot of times. That is how good Maxi is. Having like 17 cards in your hand to play against like a 5-card board, you can typically win those games. Now, of course, it does require a little bit of skill involved to be able to play into a board, but this card is incredible. And when you make a new account, you need to be crafting Maxi, you need to be crafting Ash Blossom, you need to be crafting Called by the Grave, because these cards will help push your deck to the next level and be able to compete, honestly. It'll help you play your turn and not have to face down, like I said, 17 cards on your opponent's hand where they just get to easily break your board apart, and you drop this card, they don't have a way to stop it, and a lot of times that will also get you a win. And especially as a new player, any free wins is what you need. You need those wins. You need those gems. You need to build up your account. Now, there's plenty of other non-engine that you can get into. But we'll get into more of the deck building process and whatnot here in a few minutes. What I'd like to talk about now is what should you be building? What other decks would be good for a new player? And my biggest recommendation is you should be building many different styles of decks, but focus on them one at a time. Get one fully built, get familiar with it, enjoy the deck, have fun, make sure it's something that you want to play. And then move on from there, move on to a different style of deck. And I would really recommend trying to hit all the extra deck options, all the different types of extra deck monsters. In Blue Eyes, there are links, there are synchros, there are fusions. If you're not familiar with how synchros work, how links work, but you have an idea on what fusions are, pick up a fusion deck, build that like Branded. Branded, look at this extra deck. It is almost every single card is a fusion. Really, you're not even summoning the synchro, truthfully. At least, I choose to play this. This is my list. It's, it's different than probably a lot of lists out there. I have a lot of fun with the deck. Now, for your account, I would highly recommend getting all these different strategies together, like NXC's deck, like Kashtira, Zodiac, something like that, Branded for fusion, so on and so forth. And it doesn't even have to be these options, keep in mind, like Sky Strikers, that's an all-link deck right there. And try to get familiar with the different types of extra deck monsters out there, and when events come along, which come at the last half of every month, you will, after you have a couple of strategies developed, you will sometimes and hopefully always have something to play in that event, and you really don't want to be creating decks for events and wasting your resources. And when I say wasting your resources, let's go ahead and get into this list right here. You want to be saving up all your UR crafting points as much as possible. You really want to make sure you're not wasting these, because the UR crafting points are essentially what's going to determine what you can and cannot create. As you can see, I've got over 2,000 super rare crafting points. I've got plenty of them. I can make so many super rares, and even more of the rares and even more of the normals. So it's really just the ultra rares that are the determining factor on whether or not you're going to be able to build a deck. And there are a lot of URs. Just look at how many URs are in this deck right here. Now, granted, this isn't the best example of a deck that a new player should be looking to build. This is an example of a deck that you could end up building later in your account's lifespan, once you've collected a decent amount of other cards, like, Triple Tactics Talents. I think this is a fantastic non-engine card that goes in a ton of different decks. It's great going first, it's great going second, and with no game 2, game 3, Triple Tactics Talent is one of those types of cards that's really good universally in Master Duel, and I highly recommend picking up 3 copies of this and maybe not playing it in every single deck, but it's a good option. It's a really good option. But just looking at this is a lot of crafting points required to make this type of deck. So be really aware of how many resources are going into a deck, whether or not you really want to invest into that deck. And you really got to look at your resources as an investment. If you're going to craft a deck, be ready to play that deck. Be ready to play that deck on ladder. Or be ready to play another deck that's good enough to be able to get you the gems to be able to craft whatever it is that you want. I've got some fun decks. I've got some competitive decks. I've got decks in between. I love crafting decks, but I've also been playing the game for a while. I've got a decent amount of things stored up. Now, at the end of the day, you want to be playing every event, and you don't really want to be crafting cards, but don't sweat about getting everything done. Don't sweat about reaching the highest rank every month, about whether or not you've got something to play in every single event. There are loner decks that, yeah, it does make the grind a little bit longer, 100%, but they're free. And a lot of the Konami's gotten a lot better at giving the player base decent loner decks that can compete. Are they the best? Not always. And there does tend to be 1 or 2 out of like the 3 that they offer that tends to shine a little bit more. But you don't want to make this game your day job. We're trying to have fun. And even though I'm throwing all this, optimized information towards you or anything like that, you shouldn't feel like you have to play the best thing. You have to be following everything and whatnot. You keep up to date on everything. That isn't necessary. What I'm really trying to do is try to set up any new player that's looking into getting into the game, to get them on a good starting path and to make them feel like they're prepared to play the game however they really want to play. Let's go ahead and get into some decks that a new player might be interested in. Let's go ahead and this isn't going to be the greatest example immediately, but I just want to look at these cards right here. Zodiacs, very, very good for a new player. Let's go ahead and expand on this. Let's go into edit deck and let's type in Zodiac. These cards are fantastic for a new player. Why is that? Trident, you can play, I would say play 2 copies of this. I have 2 myself, don't have 3. It's basically your card for going first, allows you to blow up a face-up card on the field, pretty good. You'll be able to get them online all the time. Every Zodiac becomes Trident. You really don't even have to understand Xyz monsters that much, the black extra deck cards. You just layer everything on top of your one Zodiac. You want to make sure that Trident is at the top. That way you can use its effect, blow up a card on your opponent's field, and you move on from there. And another card that you're going to be playing with the deck is AA Zeus, Divine Arsenal, AA Zeus, Sky Thunder. We typically just call this card Zeus. Very long name. This card is amazing going second. You manage to, let's look at the actual text on this. Any monster battled this turn, any Xyz monster that is battled that turn, can become Zeus. So you attack with one of your Zodiac Xyz, doesn't matter which one. And then main phase 2, you put Zeus on top, you discard 2 materials from under it, and you can get more familiar with Xyz monsters and what that means by experimenting with the deck. One of the best things about this deck is that most of the cards are pretty low rarity. You really don't have to invest into ultra rares. You don't have to get Zodiac Barrage. Now, will it help to make it more of an engine? As you can see in my Kashtira Zodiac deck, I play 2 Zodiac monsters, 3 Barrages because it's a free special summon. But this isn't what we're focusing on here. Just starting off, all you need is Zodiac monster, 2 Tridents, and a Zeus. It's 3 URs. It's very cheap. Very cheap. When you make Zeus, you discard those 2 materials and it just sends everything but itself to the graveyard. It's not once per turn. Zodiacs can take advantage of it. Put every single name on top of each other. Attack, main phase 2. Activate Zeus, they negate it. Activate Zeus again, they negate it. Activate Zeus again, wipe that board. Zeus is so good, so good. So this deck has utility going first, going second. Now, is it the strongest deck out there? It is not. It is not. I love Zodiac. I love Zodiac. Zodiac is literally one of my favorite decks, if not my favorite deck of all time. And I'm usually trying to find ways to try and make Zodiacs a little bit better. And unfortunately, in my opinion, the best way to probably be playing Zodiacs is to be playing it with Kashtira. But Kashtira ultimately are the better cards. So as you can see, there's way more Kashtira cards in this list than there are Zodiac cards. But there's plenty of room in the extra deck. We've got plenty of room for the Zodiac extra deck cards. It works. Now, just fill out a deck with a ton of Zodiac names. Fill out the deck with a ton of Zodiac extra deck cards. Put in a copy of Zeus. Put in some good non-engine like the Max C I was telling you about before. Put in some Forbidden Chalices and whatnot and call it a deck. Run in and get those gems. This is an excellent deck to try to start building. We could also just go ahead and try and give kind of like an example main deck that we could run here. So let's get rid of all these Kashtira cards. We don't need them. And essentially, this is what your main deck's going to be looking like right here. Run 3 of these. Could run like 2 or 3 of these. And then another good card to put in there. Fire Formation Tenki. That searches out Any Zodiac monster, really, really good. Really, really good. And you basically just be playing this. I would recommend, filling it with plenty of non-engine. The deck has plenty of room for it. You could be mixing it with other things as well, but you also gotta understand that this deck is very normal summon reliant, so that's why you're not really seeing it with a ton of other decks. Plus, the power level of this engine just isn't what it used to be comparatively for the format back all those years ago when it first came out. But I would still recommend that this be an excellent archetype to start out with. It'll help you get a little bit more familiar with how Xyzs work, and then you can kind of go from there. It's very cheap. It'll help you get into the game. Now, another deck that I'll go ahead and discard the changes. Another deck that it might be good for you to try and get into a little bit later in your account's lifespan when you've got more stuff accrued. This is stronger than the last deck I just showed you. Sky Strikers. This is all links, and this is a great deck to help you try and understand how links work. It's very simple. Most of them are link ones. They all just jump into each other. It says one non-fire Sky Striker Ace monster, so you just get your Sky Striker Ace Ray, that's a dark, or Rose, that's a light, and then immediately jump into Kagari. All of these are different elements, or different attributes I should say, and you'll be able to go into each other. You just can't go into the same one off of it. So by that I mean you can't use Kagari to go into Kagari. Plus, I think you can only summon it once per turn anyway, so it wouldn't even be feasible any other way anyway. But as you can see, then let's go ahead and go into the edit deck here so you can actually see the rarity of the cards. This deck is a lot more expensive. You need to be playing 3 Engage. 3 Engage is a UR. I would highly recommend playing Triple Tactics Thrust. This card will essentially be able to get you to your Engage. I recommend playing at least 1 Linkage, because that'll help you go for game, get other cards out. It'll help you play through stuff. It's really nice. 3 Kagari. It's also an ultra rare. You can see how these things start to stack up a little bit. You really don't need these 4 down here. It's just these, what is that, 11 cards? Yeah. It's just these 11 cards, including this SR down here, that pretty much makes the deck. So it, as a brand new player, unless you really want to play this deck, I wouldn't recommend immediately crafting it. But if you've already got a deck or two and you really want to try and get into links, this is a good beginner link deck. This will help you understand links a little bit more. Can it do a ton of linking on their turn? I mean, not really. It can do a little bit, but not really. And that's kind of the point, is that it's simple, it's straightforward. Now, like I said earlier, really try not to spread your resources too thin. You really don't want to be trying to craft all these different decks, and then you run out of crafting points, and you really can't complete any of these decks. Or maybe you only got the one, and another deck comes out and you really want to play it, or a card comes out and you really want to play it, or you find that you need a card and you really want to play it, but you just can't. That'll happen a lot. I've got a ton of cards collected on my account, and there are still so many times where I find myself wanting to craft more, and you really need to keep all of this in mind when you're trying to determine what you're going to play. Just don't get out of control. I would recommend doing research on a deck that you're interested in. See how another person's playing it. See some gameplay of it. Really try to decide if this is a deck for you. Because at the end of the day, I mean, when you dismantle these cards, you only get a third of it back. So when you you craft a card, you better really want that card. Because unless it gets hit on the ban list in some way, you are not getting those crafting points back. Now, we're going to go ahead and move on to how we can improve at the game. We've now hit how we can get into the game, but how are we going to improve at the game? Now, what I'm about to say, I understand if it makes you groan. I truly get it, especially if you're someone that really just wants to make a really cool Dark Magician Red Eyes or Blue Eyes list or something like that. Something that's, rogue. I mean, Blue Eyes isn't very rogue anymore, I'll be honest about it, and Red Eyes has gotten a lot stronger lately with the new Metamorph cards, but, maybe you don't want to play that specific strategy of them, or whatever. You want to play something a little bit lower power level. It doesn't matter if you're trying to play rogue, you're trying to play top tier, somewhere in between. You really need to understand the meta. I know it might make you groan, but let me explain why, and maybe you'll end up agreeing with me by the end of it. When you are playing rogue, one of the biggest pros to playing rogue is that the general player base, for the most part, isn't going to be as familiar with how your deck works. Now, if you're playing Dark Magician, I'm going to be straightforward. Everybody knows how to play Dark Magician. Everybody loves Dark Magician. Let's be real about it. So even if you are playing rogue, sometimes it's one of those more popular rogue decks that gets seen sometimes, or just the general player base is familiar with, really understand where your strategy lies with the community. Because one of the biggest pros with playing rogue is that your opponent might not be familiar with how to interact with your deck. And you might just get some really cool plays off for essentially free that could have easily been stopped, but your opponent just doesn't know. And that happens to me all the time. There are so many different archetypes out there. It would be unreasonable for me or the general player base to expect you to know everything. To expect the entire player base to know everything, to know how all of these different decks work. So when you're playing something that isn't considered top tier, one of your biggest advantages is that you're probably going to be able to get some free wins just because of your opponent's lack of knowledge and understanding with how your strategy works. Now, one of the cons with playing rogue is that, of course, your deck is probably maybe not as consistent, or the power level isn't high enough, or maybe it takes too many resources on average to be able to accomplish the same type of things or something similar to a power level that most modern decks are able to do, or at least the top tier strategies are able to do. And you really need to know where that lies. You need to understand that this is the handicap that you're probably giving yourself, that sometimes it can be used as a pro, like I said earlier, your opponent just not knowing how it works. But a lot of the times, if your opponent does know how your strategy works, it can really feel like there's just nothing you can do, especially depending on your matchups for the time. You get 3, 4, 5 losses in a row against Snake Eyes playing your Dark Magician deck. It might feel like this game's awful, that you just can't do anything, and you just want to play your Dark Magician deck. I really understand that. And understanding the meta is what's going to help you win those positions. Non-engine is key. I am telling you, non-engine is key. You really need to, and if you want to take it further, Snake Eye, probably the top deck in the format right now. You can kind of home in on that. You can play a card like, let's go ahead and search it up, Droll and Lockbird. Snake Eye, if you understand how Snake Eye plays, you understand that Snake Eye it searches so many of its cards. Droll and Lockbird is a really good hand trap for this format because of decks like Snake Eyes that just search out everything. You just shut down that searching for the turn. And that's what I really mean about understanding the meta. It doesn't mean that you have to play the meta, but it does mean that understanding where to hand trap, what hand traps to use, what other cards other than hand traps like Triple Tactics, Silence, or whatever will help push your deck to the next level and give your deck a fighting chance. If you're not running the right non-engine, the game could really feel hopeless, and it could make you not want to play the game anymore, and that is not something that I want. I want everyone to enjoy the game as much as possible. I want everyone to be able to play the cards that they want, but I also want to give you as much of a fighting chance as possible. So, understanding the meta, knowing that infinite impermanencing or effect veiling a Snake Eye Ash when it comes down, and stopping that, because you're not only shutting down the search effect off of it, you're shutting down its ability to summon another Snake Eyes monster from the deck. Understand where these possible choke points are. And when you're playing meta, if you want to play meta, one of the biggest pros is, of course, the power level. Wow, this deck can just create almost unbreakable boards or whatever. It just, that's a great game in itself. But one of the cons is the exact opposite of one of the pros, or really the biggest pro for playing Rogue, which is everybody knows. Everybody, or at least everybody should know, how your deck works. Everybody's familiar for the most part with the combos. They've probably seen it 1,000 times. And that means that more than likely, if they've got the hand trap, they've got the interruption, they'll probably know when to use it. And that's one of the biggest cons about playing a top tier strategy, is that there are so many people playing it, and people are so experienced playing against it, playing with it, that not only can they typically find a place to interrupt you that's very, very strong against you, but they might also be able to just completely abuse the list that you're running, the amount of cards, the ratios, anything. Let me give you a perfect example. I have, of course, a version of the top tier strategy in the format, Snake Eye. Everybody should know that one Snake Eyes Flamberge is typically played in the deck. One Snake Eyes Diabellstar is typically played in the deck. And of course, you can only play the one Ash, the one Poplar. You can take advantage of that information. Now, granted, is it always going to be correct? No, sometimes you're just going to meet that weird player that plays two or whatever. Am I saying you should be playing like that? No. But you can take advantage of this information and really be able to push your game to the next level. Now, that's essentially why you should be researching the meta. And you don't have to break out a book and pen, write on a notebook, watch some gameplay videos. Heck, you already are. Check out some of my videos. I like to play a ton of different strategies on the channel, and hopefully you guys will enjoy some more top tier lists as well in the future. Right now I've been focusing on all the anime support, and that's been real fun and whatnot, and eventually that's gonna die down a little bit. We've been there, we've done that. We've seen Blue Eyes, we've seen Prime Eye with Dark Magician, we've seen the new Red Eyes cards. So I might bust out something a little bit more modern. Hopefully you guys enjoy that, and understanding these decks, seeing them in action, especially from the player's perspective, how we're getting shut down, how we're just losing these games, where our opponents are stopping us. This is fantastic information. Fantastic information. And truthfully, honestly, as a creator, I need to do a little bit better job of trying to explain the pros and cons to each deck. I feel like I did a decent job with the Dark Magician video, explaining that we have a big wombo combo that we can do, but it's also a very large choke point, so we might not want to always go for it if we can kind of feel it out. So that's pretty much the pros and cons between understanding the meta, playing rogue. Now, the next thing to enhance your game that will help is understanding interactions and why they happened. Understanding how to read a card and trying to understand an interaction before it happens. And this might sound like a lot. Ultimately, what this comes down to is you need to be reading cards, right? Trying to understand what they do, and then just play the game. Just play the game. You don't have to know. You don't have to know. I mean, like, in terms of, like, you trying to win the game, yeah, you kind of need to know. But, if you're just starting out, if you're just looking to improve, sometimes you need to throw your head against a brick wall and understand, hey, that hurts. Maybe I shouldn't do that. If you use a Mystical Space Typhoon and blow up someone's revealed normal trap, and you understand, okay, so Mystical Space Typhoon did not negate that card, it just destroyed it. That card resolved, and it was going to go to the graveyard anyway, so I essentially used a card for no real reason. And you can kind of reverse that, right? Someone hits you with a Mystical Space Typhoon on one of your spells and traps. Let me go ahead and flip it up, get the effect to resolve, and then, since it's going to the graveyard anyway by being destroyed, I still got that card's effect. I still managed to get something out of it. And we can go into way more depth into like chain links and whatnot, but at the end of the day, playing your deck and trying to understand what card does and how it interacts with other card, and just trying to pay attention to how these cards are interacting in a game. Make sure, one of the biggest, you don't have to do this, but if you aren't immediately recognizing what went wrong in that duel, Master Duel, it's got a great feature where you can go back on essentially like a day's worth of replays. You can check that your opponent's deck list. You can watch back that replay, see what happened. You can even fast forward to it so you can get to that point where you want to be, so you can understand what happened there, and really try to learn from your mistakes. Do not be afraid to fail. It is, failure is one of the easiest ways to learn. You did something wrong, you found out something wrong happened, and then you learn from that. And of course that can be applied to many things, but it's really important to just don't give up. It's a lot of RNG is involved in these games. You know, you draw 5 random cards off of your deck every game at the start of the game. You know, you're not going to see that hand trap that you need to see every time. You're not even going to see a hand trap every single hand, or you're going to see too many, or you're not going to see a starter, or you're going to see too many starters. You know, don't get discouraged if your luck is running dry. A lot of it is luck, and that's kind of also why we love the game, is that helps, you know, give it a back and forth with the game. You know, not every matchup is set in stone. Also, don't give up on every game. Even if, especially at the lower ranks, even if you lose a coin toss, your opponent goes first, they normal summon Snake Eye Ash, you have no hand trap, they just start going off. Don't just surrender. Yeah, will take a little bit, 100%. Maybe open up YouTube or something if it's boring to you. It is what it is, you know what I mean? That's something that could probably be discussed in a later video or something like that, with how long is too long to be doing combos for a deck. But, you know, that's a different discussion. But don't surrender immediately, especially at these lower levels. You know, a lot of times they could just combo themselves into a nothing board. Just because scary card comes down that, you know, gives you flashbacks or whatever, it gives you a little bit of PTSD from some really bad beating you got by it before, it doesn't mean everybody knows how to play the deck efficiently. And they could just combo and combo and combo and have just nothing at the end of the day, and then it's just a free win. As well, even if say they got the whole combo off, they have a crazy board. You know, maybe they got that combo off of a YouTube video and they managed to do it completely, but they don't quite fully understand how their deck works, how it interacts, how your deck works, and they could just end up not interrupting you in the right place, just letting you have things when they shouldn't be, or they could end up just completely misusing their board entirely and allow you to play the game in that way. And essentially it comes down to, don't just give up. Don't just give up. Just because you see a good card come down doesn't mean your opponent is a good player. And it is okay, and this is a little bit on the other side of that coin, it is okay to surrender, though. It is okay to scoop it up, move on to the next game. Now, I know that kind of goes against what I just said, but to allow myself to reiterate a bit, try not to surrender every game. You know, there were plenty of games where I thought that I was just going to lose it, and I ended up winning. A lot of times that card off the top of the deck really might be the difference maker. Heart of the cards, baby. But, you know, it's okay to surrender. You know, don't feel like you have to fully dedicate yourself to that game, because, you know, sometimes they do end up making a board that has like 6 negates on the board, and you have 6 cards in hand, and they literally just negate every single card in your hand, and there was not a dang thing you could have done in that match. Totally happens. Totally happens. So it's okay if you feel like you're just being put in this position where it is completely unwinnable, but I would really recommend that you are certain that that's what's coming. That your opponent is giving the tells, like that's what's coming. Because, like I said with the previous statement, you know, sometimes they combo themselves down, sometimes they don't use it all correctly. But, you know, if the writing is on the wall, you might be correct, and it's okay to scoop it up and move on to the next game. It's about playing the game, it's about having fun. Don't harp on it too bad. Everybody loses a lot, you know what I mean? Like, some of the best decks in the format have like, what, a 51% win rate on average. Like, that's really, really good. Bro, that is 1% over half. What about the other 49%? They are losing. Just because it's the top deck in the game doesn't mean you just lose. It just means that they have a pretty good chance of winning on average. And you might be the better player. Going over a previous statement from before, to not be afraid of failure, but to expand on it a little bit more. Getting angry, getting tilted, it happens to everyone. But you really got to figure out, who you are, right? And what works best for you, and whether you need to take a break from the game, maybe for the whole day / night, whatever. Come back, another time or whatever. Don't make the game your day job. Don't dedicate too much time to it. But being able to move past getting upset or something like that. Like, it happens to me too. Trust me, it happens to me too. Oh my God, they had the second evenly matched. I had it ready. I had something to stop it, but they just hit me with they just had the second one. There was nothing I could do. Recognize that, maybe you couldn't have done anything. Maybe you could have, but maybe you couldn't have done anything. Maybe they just had the God hand. Maybe they just had every card they needed to win that game. That happens. That happens. And don't let it affect you. Or try not to. Something that I've learned from playing chess is, because it shows up a lot more in chess, getting upset, getting angry, it really affects your game. It really affects your game. It really affects how you're thinking about the game, how you're you get too upset. Maybe you're just surrendering the next 3 duels because it's like, oh my lord, I just got beat up by Snake Eyes, and oh my god, it's just Snake Eye, Snake Eye, Snake Eye. It's just, what am I doing? It's just, take a step back, maybe put the game down, maybe try a different deck. Maybe, you need to meditate or something. Just try not to play the game angry. Playing the game angry will always lead to a spiral, and you don't want to go down that spiral. Moving on from that, the next thing I would recommend is learning how to toggle. And what does that mean? What does that mean? Let's go ahead and go into a solo game here to try to get a better understanding of this. We'll go ahead and go first, so we can get an understanding. If you've seen my content before, you'll see me doing this all the time. By toggling, I mean this right here: auto, off, and on. Now, do I know the exact terms for it? Not really. So I'm kind of going to be working with it a little bit. But essentially what this means is, when it's on auto, it'll give you most of the opportunities to respond with something or whatever. But when it's on, you will get all of the opportunities possible, every single one, to activate something. And that really matters for whether or not you want to activate something in the draw phase, the standby phase. Having this on will allow you to be able, without your opponent even getting the chance to play the game a lot, being able to drop a max C before their main phase or anything like that. And that can really be a difference maker. Just a little example, expanding upon the max C. You're going second, you have max C, you drop max C in the standby or the draw phase, and your opponent has a triple tactics talents in their hand. Now, if you were to do that during the main phase, and they had that, they could use one of Talents' 3 effects to now draw 2 cards, or look at your hand and rip a card out of your hand. maybe rip the only starter out of your hand, quite literally prevent you from playing the game. It's just because you activated a monster effect during the main phase, specifically. There's a lot of little niche scenarios that if you're not aware, you're not toggling, you can really put yourself in a position where you get punished heavily for doing something you might just always do. And when you create a new account, this isn't available to you. And we'll go ahead and cover off. Off essentially shuts it all off for the most part. It just gives you the most crucial opportunities for the game to respond with, and not anything else. It's a good way to hide what you have in your hand. I have Fuelos in hand. If I were going second, I'd be able to turn this off, and they just don't see me have response windows to be able to activate this card. And that's also something you can do, is reading response windows. When you search something and they have an opportunity to respond, they could have an Ash Blossom, they could have a Maxi, or whatever, you know what I mean? Trying to read those response windows and trying to determine what cards your opponent has in your hand and how to play around them, and maybe you're not always right, but at least you're playing on the safe end and trying to get something established. Don't let a card completely blow you out if you can help it. Now, you don't have this toggling option immediately available, and I'm gonna be honest, it's been a minute since I've looked at this, but I believe it is activation confirmation. You need to have this on to switch, and you need to also have self-chain on. This will allow you to be able to put different chains in different orders, and it doesn't do it for you automatically. I would also recommend putting card position on manual, so you can choose where to put your cards on the field. Why that's really important. A card like Infinite Impermanence, when flipped up from being face down set on the board, when it's flipped up, you can negate a monster on the field, and also everything, all spells and traps from now on for that turn in that column. Oh yes, baby, it gets into columns too, gets negated. So say your opponent plays a monster in one of these other zones, right? Like say over here, and they have a spell card, and it has to be an effect monster, by the way, but and they play like a spell card in this column, and you have an Infinite Impermanence in the same column. You can negate the monster, and then in response, and then when that spell card goes to resolve, it gets negated by the Infinite Impermanence. You negated that monster and you negated that spell card. You got a nice 2-for-1. That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, there aren't going to be a lot of situations where that's going to be useful, but it is useful to have that knowledge. So if you can help it, you want to be able to place your cards in different areas. Now they have an animation to show you what column's being affected by Infinite Impermanence, so you don't play in it as much. That's really convenient. Wasn't always like that though. So being aware of your opponent's spell and trap cards. One of these could be an Infinite Impermanence back here. So you really got to be aware of where you're putting that spell card down. If you place the spell card down in the same column as an Infinite Impermanence, dang, they just got you when you didn't have had to do that. You didn't have to have that card get negated, but they got it for free because you're just not thinking about the columns and whatnot. All of this comes with more experience with the game. But those are 3 different options that I would have changed from a new account being made. So let's go ahead and surrender and move on. So we're going to go ahead, and that's essentially all I have for the most part. Don't worry about getting to top rank every month again. It's not that important. Try to have fun in the game. Try to rank up, but you don't sweat about not getting the highest rank every month. I don't do it every month. I used to, not really anymore. Like, look at that. I got only in platinum that month. I just wasn't playing that much Yu-Gi-Oh. Typically, I'm in diamond. I just can't find the willpower to just keep grinding. So I always end up getting knocked back down to platinum, then I'm grinding back up to diamond, and I get bored of playing so much of the games, and it's this cycle. That's just me. That's just me. But we're gonna go ahead and move on to deck building. Knowing how to deck build is one of the most fundamental aspects of playing the game. Of course, actually playing the game and being good at playing the game is the most fundamental. But if you don't have a good deck, if your list isn't very good, it doesn't matter how good you are, brother. You're just not going to have the options or the resources to be able to show that skill. So it's very important what you're playing in your deck and how you're playing it. So let's look at this is going to be a good example for what we're talking about. The Metalmorph Fiendsmith deck that I have. How I go about deck building, and we've covered it a little bit already. My thoughts, how I make decks all the time, all that. Now, we've gone over, the Maxi, the Ash Blossom, the Called by the Grave. So got these other non-engine cards. We have Fuelos, Molcharmy Fuelos. It's essentially the new Maxi. I would recommend this card. I put this card in most of my decks, especially a lot of decks that are able to discard a card out of their hand, and not even that a lot of times, truthfully. Like, I'll just slap it in there just because it's generically good. Cards like the Bestials that work really well in this deck, but are good targeted hate for light and dark graveyard monsters that your opponent's trying to get off. You can banish those out of the graveyard real quick. Hopefully they don't get their plays out of it, and you get a body on the board. You get a big dragon. That's really cool. That's really cool. Essentially, what it comes down to is playing enough engine in your deck to be able to play the game efficiently, and then slapping enough non-engine in the deck to make it go that much further. And it doesn't just come down to hand traps and board breakers. Just cards outside of your engine that can kind of be taken away and used somewhere else, like Kashtira or Fiendsmith. And I know it's a little bit cringe to be seeing Fiendsmith, but it's everywhere. But it is an example of an incredible engine that can be splashed in another deck that can help your deck get taken to the next level. Why do you want to be playing cards like this? The video I made previously with Red Eyes, the most recent one, is one of the best examples. It's using this list. I have a short that you guys should check out if you haven't, that also helps show off the reasons why cards like this are in the deck. Is, you slap down a Kashtira Unicorn first thing, they're like, dang, he's on Kashtira, I gotta stop that card. Boom bam, I lied. Normal summon Black Metal Dragon, start doing my plays. These cards help bait out interactions, help deal with different interactions, help extend. These are the types of cards as well that help you do more. And at the end of the day, you really want your main engine to resolve. You want to play that main strategy, right? Well, if you're playing against like 3 negates, play your Kashtira, play your Fiendsmith, watch them get negated, play your Black Metal Dragon, go into your Red Eyes cards, play your Red Eyes deck, and dang, watch them suffer because, you know, they wasted all their interruptions on all these non-engine specific tech related cards. And on the subject of engines, I would really try to look into and explore the different engines. I don't mean that you need to be crafting them all, but really consider what an engine could do for you. You know, looking at my pet deck, my quote-unquote Zodiac deck, even though it's mainly a Kashtira deck. It's the Kashtira deck, but it's got a small 5-card Zodiac main deck engine in it to help it do a little bit more, have some more options, you know, stuff like that. That will really help change up your strategy, transform it, make it do better, perform better, play through things better. It's overall a really good thing. Try not to play too many engines. You know, definitely experiment. And when it comes to, let's go back to the Metamorph deck. Different ratios, right? So you want to try to keep your deck size to 40 in most cases as much as possible. Why? It gives your 3 ofs and whatnot, like Black Metal Dragon at 3. You're going to see that a lot more often if you're playing the minimum amount of cards possible. I would also recommend don't overload your deck with normal summons. You know, you don't want to see a hand of 5 normal summons. That one normal summon gets stopped. Well, dang, you're just not playing the game anymore. Let's look at how many normal summons are in this deck. We play 5. 5 normal summons. The 3 copies of Black Metal Dragon, the 2 copies of Metal Illusionist. We essentially play a 6th in Fabled Blurry if we end up drawing it. But the goal isn't to draw it. Kashtira Unicorn, special summon. Fiendsmith Engraver, special summon. Bistrels, special summons. These, you have your normal summons, you have your extenders, you have your hand traps, you have your board breakers. A good ratio of them is what's really going to take your deck building skills to the next level. Now, I would say anywhere from 4 to 6 normal summons is good, and a general list of 40. I would say after that, and it does kind of depend on the consistency of the deck, definitely add some extenders. Extenders that work for your deck. Don't just start slapping anything in there. You really try to understand what works well with your strategy. Play a good amount of extenders. Play your minimum non-engine as well in terms of hand traps. You're playing your 2 Maxi, that's 2. 3 Ash Blossom, that's 5. 2 Called by the Grave, that's 7. And then you can take it from there. Cross out Designator for the 8th to Maxi. It stops anything that is in your deck at the time that you can activate it and banish it from your deck. It'll stop that card for that turn. So we're already playing Maxi. We call one of the Maxis. We banish it out of our deck. Maxi is now negated for the turn. Cross out Designator is essentially another Called by the Grave that also works for cards like Infinite Impermanence as long as you are playing it in your deck. I would recommend Cross out Designator, but I would recommend Called by the Grave more because it's genuine. It can just stop graveyard cards as well. It can be an interruption in itself. So you're looking to play at least these 7 cards, the 2 Called by the Grave, the 3 Ash Blossom, 2 Maxi. What other good non-engine? We're playing 2 Triple Tactics talents, 3 Infinite Impermanence, 3 Fuelos. So not looking at the Bistrels that are supposed to be in the deck to be a part of the engine, even though it is also non-engine. How much non-engine are we looking at here? We're looking at there are 2 Maxi, 3 Ash Blossom, that's 5, 3 Fuelos, that's 8, 2 infinite impermanence, that's 10. 2 called by the grave, that's 12. The cross out designated for 13, and then 3 infinite impermanence for 16. Non-engine, that's almost half of the deck. That's almost half of the deck in terms of spells, trap cards, hand traps, and whatnot. Things to just generically break our opponent's board. Now a little bit more tuned in to our strategy. That's also our non-engine, is the Cash-Tier Unicorn, the Fiendsmith Engraver, even though actually the Fiendsmith would be more considered an engine for a deck because it does work extremely well with our Metal Illusionist plus like a Bistral or whatever. It's really good. Really good. So you can, argue whether or not that's engine, that's non-engine. It's not specifically tied to our Metamorph strategy. It's an extra layer that we're adding on to push it to the next level. So we've, you have what we said, like 16. Let's look at the other cards. So that's another 5 in the Bistral, so that's 21. If we count the Fiendsmith cards, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 25. And then the Cash-Tier cards for 3 more, 28. And then the field spell to basically give the third copy of Unicorn, 29. That is a lot. That's one of the advantages of our Metamorph deck, is that, with the 2 Illusionist, the 2 Metamorph targets, the 2 Metamorphs, and the Black Metal Dragon plus Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, that really isn't a lot of engine and allows for a lot of freedom in the deck. So understanding engines, slowly acquiring engines on the side to help splash into a deck you want to play, they can be very powerful, and they can really take your deck to the next level. They can really support your deck. Now, a nice little feature in Master Duel is the bookmark feature. I try to take advantage of this as much as possible. As you can see, my bookmark is just filled with essentially staples, what I would consider staples for extra decks as well. Just generic extra deck monsters for the most part that are really useful to keep in mind. You can kind of use this as a little bit of a basis if you need to. But essentially, I would recommend that you use your bookmarked cards as cards that tend to be useful as options to throw in essentially any deck, right? Got some kaijus, you got lava golem, I got a ton of different hand traps, all these different hand traps, some generic extra deck cards, some really good spell cards, some really good trap cards, Infinite Impermanence, Solemn Judgment, the new Dominus cards, Forbidden Droplets. I do think Book of Moon is worth it as well. Book of Moon's pretty nice. You're Called by the Grave. Even Heavy Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, Regeki, Monster Reborn, stuff like that. Things that are really good that maybe you don't always remember. And throwing it in the bookmark, so when you're looking to fill out your deck with more cards after you've got your main engine involved, taking a look through your bookmarks and trying to make sure that you fill out that deck with a bunch of awesome cards that you have in your collection. Now we're getting to about the end of it. We pretty much covered, for the most part, everything. But one of the last things that I'll say here is, do not be afraid to look up resources. Use the internet. Use the internet to your fullest advantage. Don't be afraid to look up combo guides. Don't be afraid to look up other YouTubers that have different lists and whatnot. One of the best resources that you can use out there, and we'll go ahead and shout them out on the channel, even though it ain't much. DK's MasterDuelMeta.com is one of the best resources that you have at your disposal. So many different lists of so many different decks. You can use that to help you build your deck. And look, what I'm about to say, it might be a little controversial to someone that hasn't been, following along with the format and really just wants to make their thing, be different, play their stuff, and be successful. But you're not a genius. I'm not a genius. Okay, maybe you are a genius, but most of you aren't. And it's okay to need help building your deck. And it is also okay to just copy and paste a deck. It's okay. Now, I would recommend to use other people's lists as like a little bit of a guide to how you should be thinking about building your deck, and maybe not copy it one-to-one, because you might not fully understand why this person's playing the different ratios that they are, why they played this card in their deck and another person didn't, or whatever. But it is a good thing to be doing research and really trying to get familiar with a new archetype or a new deck without having to spend your resources on it. And again, this is all to be looking to properly investing your resources so you don't run out and feel like you got nothing out of it. You really want to feel like you have something and that you're saving for something else that's going to be really fun and enjoyable. And the same is with your gems. At the end of the day, whether you're crafting decks from scratch, you're getting help building your decks, or you're just straight up copy and pasting them, it is okay. It is completely fine. Do what makes you happy. Don't let other people and their preferences determine how you should be playing the game. At the end of the day, when I'm giving these tips out, this advice, I'm just really trying to optimize your ability to enjoy the game in the way that you want to enjoy it, and allowing you to have a good strategy involved in making your account, and hopefully you don't spend a single dime on it. This is one of the most player-friendly, probably the most player-friendly TCG simulator out there, officially released by the developer of the actual card game. Yeah, you can definitely spend a ton of money on this game. You can spend all the money, get all the cards. Me, I've definitely spent some money on the game. I've been playing the game since the game released, literally since day one, since like the morning it came out. I remember being so hyped that it came out, downloading it on my phone immediately, and just getting right into, it might be cringe that I was playing on my phone, but it is what it is. I love this game. It's very player friendly, and you can get away with not even spending a single dime in building all the decks that you want to build for the most part, as long as you're willing to put the time in and you invest your resources in a smart way. But that's going to be about it. I just have one more piece of advice, and this is the most important advice of them all. Most of all, just have fun and do what you want to do. You don't have to follow this advice. It's just general advice. Don't get yourself into a hole. And the game evolves all the time. And so should you. That's part of the fun. This game's ever changing. Hopefully it's going to be around for a lot longer still. And we'll all get to enjoy this game for a very long time. And we'll get to grow with it. But that's going to be it, guys. Hopefully it wasn't too much. Hopefully this didn't bleed out too long. I don't know how long this took. But if you guys enjoyed the content, be sure to let me know. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be sure to put out some more gameplay soon. hopefully I'll think of something else different as well to help, you know, shake things up. I'm looking to also expand on the different games that are played on the channel, but you know, it's always gonna have Yu-Gi-Oh, baby. It's my favorite game right here. So if you love the game too, it's nice to have you. We'll see you guys next time. Later.